Hey everybody, Mr. Lopez here with some thoughts and sort of a brainstorming exercise for y'all for essay number one. In general, I'll make a video like this for the major assignments across the semester, so essays 2 and 3, and sometimes I squeeze one in for the final exam. Basically, this is just my way to make sure everybody understands the gist of the assignment, and especially for this first essay, what I'm looking for, the major parts of an essay. And I have some notes written down right here for y'all. First thing, I've talked to a few of y'all already about creating a thesis statement for this essay, which is a compare contrast. And my response for all of those questions has been now and across the semester, make sure your thesis statement is a direct, specific response to the essay prompt. In other words, if I asked you to compare and contrast earthly and spiritual salvation, your thesis statement should in some way say earthly salvation and spiritual salvation are similar in these ways and different in these ways because blank. And so that would give you not just the two types of salvation, not just the two types of salvation and how they're similar and different, but also why. And so what you want across the semester is a thesis statement that directly responds to the prompt and is as specific as possible. And if you can accomplish that with, there's no rule, I usually say 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 sentences max. If you can accomplish a direct, specific response to the prompt in 1 to 3 sentences, you have an awesome thesis. So that's what you're looking for. Body paragraphs. So this essay requires 3+ full pages, double-spaced typed on a Word document. And what I mean by full pages, it means down to the very last line of page 3. My recommendation to my classes is always to even spill a sentence or two onto page 4 just to be sure there's no formatting issue that you don't notice that might push you back once you submit your final draft, and it's actually less than 3 full pages. Less than 3 full pages results in a loss of a letter grade, and you don't want that. So 3 pages down to the very bottom, if not spilling onto page 4, is what you want. And each one of those body paragraphs, so everything between your introduction on one hand, your conclusion paragraph on the other, everything in the middle needs to tie explicitly back to your thesis. In other words, if I just plucked any random body paragraph from the middle of your essay and I read it, and then I looked at your thesis statement alone, separate, I should be able to say, okay, I see the connection between that thesis statement, the main idea of the paper, and this body paragraph. And I should be able to do that for each body paragraph in between your intro and conclusion. I should be able to see the connection between your main idea and each body paragraph. That's a test that you can put your draft through for sure to see if your structure is legitimate. And then some specific thoughts about this essay. Some people have asked if I could just clarify for them what I mean by earthly and spiritual. So this is for y'all. For spiritual, a synonym would be supernatural, so not of the world, not tangible. Many people find themselves saying something like, spiritual things require faith. In other words, not proof, but belief without proof. On the other hand, earthly, what do I mean by earthly? I mean things that are of the earth, that are tangible, that we either have or can produce potentially evidence and proof for. An example, for spiritual salvation, I would break it into, and the same thing with earthly, I would break them into a savior and a threat. An instance of salvation usually requires some savior and some threat. So in the case of a spiritual act of salvation, consider in Hughes's essay Salvation what the elders and what all of the people at the revival are expecting to happen. The spiritual threat is that dire picture of hell the preacher preaches about. It is eternal damnation, torment of the soul, etc. There's not proof, tangible proof. No one is at that revival saying, look at the video I took on my phone. This is what hell's like. But they believe it. They take it on faith. So the spiritual threat in that instance for Hughes is hell, eternal damnation, eternal punishment. The spiritual savior for them is the Judeo-Christian God. That is who is going to save them, their souls, from eternal punishment. So that's a good instance for sure from our readings of spiritual salvation. Earthly salvation, there are a ton of examples, but if you're thinking of the Barmania and Rice piece, which involves COVID, COVID is itself, the virus is an example of an earthly threat. You could consider the earthly savior to be first responders, depending on how specific your example is. First responders, it could be the medication, it could be a vaccine, it could be a mask, it could be distancing, that sort of thing. Those are things that can save you potentially from the threat. Earthly saviors from an earthly threat, which is COVID. And there's lots of other examples, earthly threats, things like fires, flood. Right now we're in hurricane season, hurricanes. And the saviors are things like levees, like for a hurricane, or like first responders, police, fire, etc. I think you get the idea. Earthly saviors and threats are things of the earth. Spiritual saviors and threats are things that require some sort of belief outside of evidence. And what I would do, I would consider the saviors and the threats for each side, spiritual and earthly, and that gives you multiple things to compare and contrast. How are earthly threats similar to spiritual threats? How are they different? How are earthly saviors and spiritual saviors similar and different? And that should get you somewhere between, I would guess, 4 to 5 body paragraphs. Get your bookends, your intro and your conclusion, and you're at 3+ pages for your essay. Some other reminders. Remember that this is an essay, and so are essays 2 and 3, that first person is not allowed. So you cannot say I, me, mine, we, ours, etc. And that should help you if you're somebody who finds this a difficult topic to write about because you have strong personal beliefs one way or the other. Remember, this is not an attestation of what you personally believe. This doesn't need to be validated by your preacher or your group of friends. This is you arguing simply for the similarities and differences between these two types of things, two types of salvation. So no first person. You can, of course, inform your arguments with first person experiences and beliefs. Just couch it in the third person. Instead of I, say he, she, they. Few more things before I let you go. You are required to use all 3 readings. So Hughes, Barmanian Rice, and Hudson, to use all 3 readings for support. In other words, let's just say quoting is a good example of what I mean by using. You need to quote from all 3 readings at least one time to check that box, to not lose points for not meeting the essay requirements. So if you quote one time from each of the readings, you're good to go. You can, of course, borrow material more often. You can quote one time from each, maybe paraphrase from 1 or 2. That's all fine. But I need to have you using each of the source materials, the 3 readings, one time each. And there is no research allowed on this essay. So all of your examples, all of your arguments and claims are going to be either your own or they're going to come from the 3 readings. And a general rule of thumb for all of the essays for my class, at least, a ratio to shoot for is about 80-20. So 80% your own arguments, claims, examples from your own experiences, thoughts, ideas, and about 20% from the readings. You don't want to give your essay to somebody else. The assumption we're going to make is that anybody who reads your essay has read Barmanian, Rice, Hudson, and Hughes. So they don't need a lot of their ideas. They want your ideas supported by the readings. So 80% yours with about 20% of your essay supported by outside readings, those 3 essays we read for this first essay. If you're nervous, like have I quoted too much or borrowed too much material from the readings, print out your paper, or you can use your screen, I guess, and highlight everywhere you've borrowed material, everywhere there's a quotation, a paraphrase, or a bit of summary. And if it looks like it's a third of your paper or more, that's probably too much. Somewhere between 80-20, 75-25 borrowed material on the shorter end, that's what you want to aim for. And finally, don't forget to document your sources properly. So whenever you borrow ideas or language from another source, you should have an in-text citation inside your paper, and then you need a works cited entry for all three readings. You should have three entries on your works cited page: one for Hughes, one for Bermani and Rice, and one for Hudson. And if you have three entries on your works cited page, and every time you borrow material, you have a parenthetical citation saying, alerting your reader that this is borrowed, you absolutely will avoid plagiarism, whether incidental or purposeful. And nobody wants to get in one of those situations. Otherwise, y'all, my suggestion, as I said in my introduction video for the course, is always work ahead. Almost universally, I would say 99% of the time, when I get feedback from students with how they feel about this first essay in English 111, they say, I wish I would have started earlier. My essays are never super easy to answer in 30 minutes. They require some thought. Critical thinking is something I value tremendously. And so the earlier you get started, even if it's just watching this video and just thinking before you fall asleep, when you wake up in the morning, on your ride to or from school, at work, whatever it is, just thinking about the essay, that's going to be tremendously in your favor when it comes to writing things down. Don't wait until the day this essay is due, and it's due at 11:59 p.m. on the due date. Don't wait until 10 o'clock at night and say, I'm going to hammer this sucker out. 3 pages is nothing for me, and I'm going to do awesome. That almost never happens. So start early, even if it's just thinking, jotting down some notes. And the earlier you start, the more time you have to use resources, to ask me questions, to get some ideas from me if you need help, to visit the ILC, to visit the Virtual Real Center and send your paper for some feedback from them. You want as much time as possible. So best of luck, y'all. Remember, essay number 1 is 15% of the course, so not 30%, obviously, but substantial. And you certainly want to start our first major essay. You want to start on the right foot. Again, best of luck, y'all. If I can help, send me an email, and let me know what I can do to make things easy for you. Bye.